For this video, you will need your Module 10 notes and your Module 10 packet. This is Parts of the Nervous System and Reflexes, Part 2, because I like to talk and I ran out of time on the last video. So in this video, we're just going to talk specifically about reflexes. This is your Module 10 packet. Okay, we already went through the different parts and divisions of the nervous system. So you're going to flip in your packet to the very last page. It looks like this. Okay, and we need to talk about what a reflex is. So we'll move this a little bit. Okay, so when we talk about a reflex, okay, the definition is a simple, automatic response to a sensory stimulus. Simple, automatic response to a sensory stimulus. Okay, so I think of like different reflexes. When something's hot, like you pull it away, it's kind of a reflex, right? So the question is, how do reflexes work in terms of the body, right? Like, what is the actual process for a reflex to take action? So I'm going to go back over here. I'm just going to draw my person. Okay. And we discussed in previous videos, right? The central nervous system is the brain and spinal cords, right? So central, NS, stands for nervous system. And we talked about in the central nervous system, it's made up of interneurons. And the peripheral nervous system, also known as PNS, peripheral nervous system, is what connects the outside, the periphery, if you will, of the body to the central nervous system. And the peripheral nervous system is made up of sensory neurons and motor neurons. So the question is, how do reflexes actually work? And this is showing you a diagram of what actually happens for a reflex. And I want you to think of a time that you've ever, and I hope this has never happened, but that you've burned yourself, right? So I went to go pull a pot off the stove, and I thought that the handles were insulated enough, and apparently they weren't, and I burned myself, right? But here's the thing. I moved my hand back off the pot before I actually felt pain. And just so we're clear, the place that you feel pain, like pain is a signal that actually comes from the brain. That's where all of your feeling comes from, right? It's coming from the brain. So how is it possible that I moved my hand back before I felt the pain? Well, that's a reflex, right? So this diagram is walking you through how reflexes work, okay? So if this is a candle, this is meant to be a candle. Hopefully you can tell what that is. And this person is very intelligently putting their finger over a candle, right? Smart move. So here's the person's finger over the candle, and you have skin receptors, right, that connect to muscle, right? So here's the muscle. And so the idea is your sensory neurons, okay, and I'll do sensory, we'll do it in pink, right? So I'll go back up and label. So sensory neurons, we're going to do them in pink. So your sensory neurons actually pick up that sensory information and they carry it towards the spinal cord. Because remember, the peripheral nervous system is picking up information from the periphery of your body, in this case your finger, and conducts that information towards the spinal cord to get up to the brain, right? So it's picking up that heat sensor, right, that heat message, and carrying it towards your spinal cord, okay? So here is that carrying it towards your spinal cord. Now, this butterfly-like thing right here, this is your spinal cord, okay? So I'll just label that spinal cord. So that is your spinal cord. So the sensory neuron, in this case because we're talking about reflexes, picks up the sensory information, carries it towards the spinal cord. And once again, the spinal cord is made up of interneurons. Now, we know that one neuron is actually attached to more than just another single neuron, right? They're called neural networks, right? The brain's neuron clusters that work in groups together. So when this sensory neuron reaches up with an interneuron, this interneuron is going to send the message up, right? It's sending the message up the spinal cord because it's trying to get to your brain about information about what's happening. So it's sending the information up. At the exact same time, it's sending the information back around. So this sensory neuron is essentially activating other neurons. One starts the message traveling up your spinal cord. The other one starts the message and it loops it right back around. This interneuron loops right back around and immediately hooks up to a motor neuron. Right? It's immediately hooking up to a motor neuron. And that motor neuron connects to muscle, and it tells you to move your hand away. So the whole point of a reflex is that it happens without conscious thought. Like you're not even aware necessarily of what you're doing. Your body's responding before your brain even has a second to realize what's going on. So the way it works in terms of a reflex is the sensory neuron activates interneurons. And this path of interneurons going up to the brain, it takes longer for that message to go all the way up to the brain to think about it, come back down interneuron, then loop up to a motor neuron. So what a reflex does is it literally loops right back around to a motor neuron and has you move your hand away. And that happens faster than the interneuron going up to the brain telling your body like, hey, I'm in pain. Which is why you can move your hand away from a flame faster, or before I should say, you can move your hand away from the flame before you even realize that it hurts because it's hot. Right? So once again, a reflex, a simple automatic response to a sensory stimulus, and it happens because you're moving your hand before the interneurons go all the way up to the brain, right? It's kind of a sensory neuron immediately to an interneuron that loops right back to a motor neuron, and you move your hand away because your body is in danger, right? That's kind of what reflexes are for. And then that message continues still up the brain, and then you feel pain. Okay? So that is how a reflex works. Hope you enjoyed the video.